go. All right, welcome back to edition 112 of the Bebo Knows podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock, and with me we have the original guest from the first COVID-based podcast, the renewal of the podcast. We have Kevin, and I realized that when I was re-listening to the podcast, and in classic form, I butchered the pronunciation of your handle. I said KJHOGO instead of Hogo, but
Hogo. That one stuck with me since high school. That one, it's funny, like that's what I use online and for like usernames and stuff, but no one actually calls me that in real life. So any pronunciation works on that one, really.
Got it. So we'll bypass the obvious introductions because you've been introduced before. So if you really want to know Kevin, his roots, you can listen to the beginning of the 102 podcast. But we're going to lead with kind of a can check here. And if anyone knows, me and Kevin have exchanged some beers here. And he's got the Rice Krispie beer. And I have the beer from Wicked Weed Brewing called Pernicious. And you said this one, I didn't see the percentage, but you said it was 9%?
9%.
Oh, this says 7.3, but still, that's
okay.
That's still not.
I was
ballparking. That's fine. That's still good. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
So a hearty cheers to you and everyone else that's listening.
Cheers. Thank you for the delivery. That was I got to give you a shout out. You put in the legwork to figure out how to do the shipping, and I really just reused your materials to send it back. So I've been enjoying the beers, and I was excited to dive into this Rice Krispie one. I saved it for the podcast because you had said some good things about it. Yeah. And it's living up to the hype. It's great.
Nice. We'll discuss more of that later in case people are interested in doing that with their friends or with me or you, because I know I saw some more talk about that. But this podcast is more centered around your specialties, which are NBA and WNBA. And I think the WNBA kind of snuck up on you, so that probably won't be as lengthy of a topic. But.
Yeah, I think it snuck up on a lot of people. It's the level of uncertainty for a lot of the players. It starts on Saturday, and I'm still like going through the roster, there are and we'll talk about it when we get into that bit. Sure. But there are like coaches who can't travel. They've been in a battle with like their MVP to get her to go, and so that's been a disaster. And usually it's not a huge undertaking because each team only plays about 32 games, I think, in the WNBA.
Okay.
And that's not a big deal when there's no NBA. But we also have NBA going on at the same time. So it'll be an interesting balance the next couple days to figure out exactly what the timing is going to be and stuff. That'll be a fun challenge of my laziness, that's for sure. All
right. Well, we'll get started with the NBA. So I think when we had our first talk, obviously there was a lot of uncertainty going on. I personally didn't think sports would come back this fast, but I'm still not sure how well it's going to do. But here we are. So let's just try to enjoy it, and let's just try to pretend that this is gonna work.
I've been putting the caveat when I've been discussing sports with a lot of my friends that I think the right call probably would have been to just kill these and take the summer to do some prep work and get things ready for the fall and winter, which I think, everyone with a brain is going to be more difficult because there'll be more indoor things and there could be a real big surge when, more people are indoors. So I am, wary that this restarting sports in general is putting a lot of people at risk. And the athletes are taking on some risks to do this. We still don't even really know exactly like what the long-term effects are. So, I'm just going to compartmentalize that like moral obligation to understand that, and then like get really excited about watching the Celtics play basketball. Sure. So I think I'm trying to keep both going. I'm laughing like even when you're saying that, I have the Yankees Nationals game on right now, sure. And Soto got ruled out. With COVID, and they're playing this game and they have no idea who interacted with him while he was positive. Yeah. So I think MLB clearly has the least comprehensive plan so far. But if I know anything, the NFL will try and one up them on dumb COVID plans. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I'm not used to going on a family trip like in early August and having NBA to follow. So this will be interesting.
It'll be fun. It's definitely, things have gotten bleak. Just being in the apartment and seeing, how it hasn't really improved. And so there is a nice mental escape to being able to follow basketball. Even just going through some of the numbers to get ready for the podcast has been a lot of fun and has kind of gotten me excited. And there's some preseason going on right now, or exhibition. I don't even know what you want to call it. Bubble preseason going on, and seeing some of those guys play has been exciting. So I'm ready to jump into it. And like I said, I with the full caveat that I know that this is probably a terrible idea long term.
Yeah, sure. And the nice thing is though that these players, there's they have the opportunity to say I'm sitting out, and there's been plenty of those that have already done that. So they have the full choice of doing that, and that's I think everyone should respect everyone's those players' decisions as a fan. Like if a couple of your Celtics players did that, you certainly wouldn't blame them.
No, I mean Gordon Hayward, his wife is pregnant and she's due like in the third round of the playoffs right now, or second round. And so if he leaves to go to see his new child, then he has to quarantine for another, he's going to miss a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
He can't just zip out, go see baby, come back in. But I would much rather him go do that. This season already feels weird. Like if you win the championship, I don't even know like how real it feels. But I mean, if the Celtics win, I'm going to pretend it's like the most important championship of all time. So I'll find a way to erase this off the internet if they do win. Sure. But with that being said, people have to make the right decision for their families. Like Karl Anthony Towns' mother passed away from it. And, I couldn't imagine going into the bubble and playing with that going on. Minnesota wasn't invited, so it wasn't a problem. But there have been a couple guys who have already had to leave for family emergencies. And I think that, any fan who's upset about them doing that has their priorities way out of whack.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the first set of questions here. So how have your thoughts and how's your approach of gambling in the bubble changed since we recorded? Because I know, like, you had touched base on like the home court aspect, and we can talk about that as well. But how developed has your thoughts on this gotten? Like, have you been spending like a lot of time, or maybe the past like month or so since they said, or a month and a half, or have you been kind of prepping ever since we had our pod?
Definitely have not been prepping ever since we had our pod. I took some time off. I got into some esports a little bit, which was fun. Tried something new. Not particularly lucrative, but it was fun and something I'm going to continue to explore. I think esports is one of those emerging markets, but I wouldn't say anything has really changed from a baseline modeling perspective. Like the origination part is pretty much going to track with what I was discussing before. One thing that I do like to bet and feel like I can find some good prices on are playoff series. But I think I'm going to be a little more hesitant about that, knowing how quickly a team's roster makeup could change. I think maybe looking to roll over some money lines or things like that may be a better option, just to mitigate some of the risk of, a player going down or something like that. I'm watching the restart. It looks pretty straightforward. I mean, these guys look a little winded at times, but they had time to practice. They had time to prep. They were in the middle of the season. It's not like they're starting a season from scratch. It's some time off, but the good thing is that the roster changes aren't quite the same as like a new season. So when Russell Westbrook joins the Rockets, or how are Paul George and Kawhi going to play with each other? There aren't quite that many unknowns. There are some interesting things about people recovering from injuries. I was watching the Trailblazers today. They have Nurkic back. They have Collins back. Their big rotation was not good. They were playing Caleb Swanigan, the Purdue kid, who's a great college player, an okay NBA player, fun player, but not really of the caliber of someone like Nurkic or Collins. So that's going to change. I was talking about a little bit today with people online that the 8-1 matchup, if Portland makes it to the 8 seed now, I would be a lot less excited if I were Los Angeles with some of these guys healthy. And then on the flip side of that, the Lakers had some guys that didn't go to the bubble, and some guys in the restart have actually gotten hurt with some foot injuries. And so really I've just been focusing on roster construct and minute distribution across some of these teams. I think that's going to be the most important part. The other thing is they're going to play 8 games before they start the playoffs. So those 8 games are interesting because the kind of struggle for seeding a lot of the time is super important because you get home court advantage. Like a lot of the teams on the 3, 4, 5, 6-ish bubble are usually duking it out to get to that home court advantage, right? Get to the 4 seed. Yeah. That's not going to be as important now, obviously, because there is no home court advantage. So I'm not sure how seriously some of these teams are going to be taking these 8 games. So betting those is going to be interesting from a motivation standpoint, just because, in my opinion, I think that health going into the playoffs and bringing guys along and getting them back in shape is going to be much more important than maybe the difference between the 5 and the 6 seed, depending on who you're playing. It might be a bad matchup, so teams might want to get off it. But I think that having all your guys healthy coming into the playoffs will make a much bigger difference. And you'll see teams, like the Celtics are probably going to limit Kemba's minutes and probably not going to push to overtake the Raptors at the 2 seed. Whereas if the regular season, they definitely would have Kemba playing more extended minutes. LeBron is probably going to be rested. Kawhi, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, those guys are going to get less minutes in these first 8 games. So when you're betting those, I would try and look for coach quotes, look for how much turnaround time there is or how many minutes they played the game before. If they played 36, 37, 38 the game before and they're playing a second game in 2 days, I'm not sure I would expect some of these names to be playing the same amount. So that's really going to be the big focus for me is trying to find those new rotations because they're going to be different than the end of the season.
Sure. Yeah, and the way you said that, the cross sport equivalent made me think of NFL Week 17.
Yes.
So, you'll have a guy, the starters playing like a quarter. It'll almost be like a NFL like preseason game almost too, like where
and some teams do need to there are other teams like Portland who aren't in the playoffs yet. Yeah. So they need to play everybody. Like Dame Lillard's going to have to play 40 minutes a night to try and get them in. So there will be some motivation. I would just check seeding and check some coaches' quotes to make sure that you're not, laying 6 points with the Lakers when LeBron's going to play 24 minutes,
Sure.
Things like that. That would be my general approach to the first couple games. And then that'll kind of segue into that next kind of home court advantage part in the outline.
And before I bring that up, to tie into what you were just talking about, I figured I would introduce one of the questions that Occam's Edge brought up on how you planned on betting the teams with playoff spots locked up. So do you think your advantage is going to be in those first couple of games? Like, do you think that that there'll be like a quick turn around with the books, like being able to recognize, hey, maybe these teams don't really give a shit about these 8 games, and they don't care if they are the 3rd seed or the 6th seed?
Yeah, I think that you're going to want to look at the seeding locked up. It's probably not going to change a whole lot from end of the regular season from that perspective. But I would even extend it further down to the other seeds and kind of say, hey, like, if you're the 5 seed, I don't think they're going to press to get to the 4 to get that home court advantage, right? So It's going to be that they had the playoff locked up, and that changing who their playoff opponent is by moving up or down in the seeding won't make an appreciable difference. So that's how I'm going to approach those two. And then I kind of touched on the series length props with no home court advantage. And I don't know that there will be a huge discrepancy in the pricing for those series because the market is going to open with pretty standard pricing on neutral court, right? I think to start, I would just be wary about betting. Some of the playoff series can take 2 weeks. The NBA spaced it out, pretty significantly, and which is good in regular terms because players get time to rest and recover. But it's not great in this scenario because you're just kind of taking on more risk of, a guy missing time or missing anything. So if there's anything egregiously priced that we find in the series, you can't not bet it, and you can usually get off some of the series price stuff in a game-to-game scenario. But I just I can't think of a specific advantage to this scenario and pricing in home court advantage. And the one thing that I had been taking out and kind of trying to figure out exactly how I want to account for is the playoffs are one of the times where the narrative driven things actually hold some merit. Where in some instances, like the revenge factor or whatever, game 7 unders, whatever you'd see in like a Fezzik write-up, they actually do get priced in the playoffs. And so if you look, if the team goes down 2-0 and they're going back to play game 3 at home, it's not just a regular home court advantage swing. There's an extra couple percentage points in that line that get built in from a desperation factor and from the kind of 2-0 down. So if you were just using basic market prices and basic home court advantage in the 2-0 game, you would think you have an edge on the road team every time coming into that third game. I'm not sure how that plays in because there's no desperation factor really when you're down 2-0. You're not going back home. There's no crowd motivation.
Yeah.
There's no back against the wall mentality. We're back home. Things are different. You're kind of just going through the same motions. And I think in the instance where we're actually kind of pricing in some of the narrative, it just doesn't exist at all anymore. So there may be some 2-0, maybe they might overprice the underdog in that situation. But I'm really interested to see what they hang start, on some of those 1-8 series or 2-7s. If both those teams go down 2-0, what kind of prices are you going to see for that third game that are going to be different than what you would see if there were actual travel involved?
That's a good point. And I know that when a team goes from 2-0 to 3-0, that fourth game line, maybe it's because of the fact that there's more of a chance of a blowout because the team just kind of gives up. But I know that you'll see a 3 or 4 point difference between game 3 and 4 if they're if the team goes up 3-0. So I'm guessing you probably see something maybe similar to that.
Right.
But
and that's kind of one thing I would look for in a price is what type of especially with some of the notes I have here talking about like the mental fatigue of being in the bubble that long. Like if you're down 3-0 and you've been in Orlando, Florida, no offense, I don't know if we have any people listening from Florida, but not like number one on my visit list, Orlando, Florida. And, you know, you've been eating hotel food and away from your family and you're down 3-0. You know, what type of effort are you going to give to come back if you're a 2-7 seed to in that game 4? Because, you know, mentally I'm checked out 100%. I'm obviously not a professional basketball player, but you got to imagine some of those guys, especially if they've been there before or like, you know, aren't a huge fan of their coach or team, they're going to check out down 3-0 just to get out of the bubble. You got to think that that's like a not that bad of a deal. Like, hey, you get to go home and be with your family. But you could do like the impossible, come back from 3-0 down, which I would guess that, you know, we're going to see more sweeps in a big way.
Okay. All right. All right, so we answered both of his questions. Then we were going to talk about the home court advantage decreasing, and I think we kind of just touched base on that. So
yeah,
are you?
I kind of combined them.
So you're not. So you don't. I'm guessing you don't see the as many upsets as you might anticipate.
So technically, like mathematically, you would expect to see more upsets because teams don't get more games. The higher seed doesn't get more games at home.
Yeah.
So if we're just defining upset by seed and not by what the market would have them as, like you should technically see more upsets from that perspective, just because you don't get the home court advantage boost. That being said, I think that you know, some of the more unlikely scenarios are going to be increasingly unlikely because of the mental factor of having to play in this weird scenario. So, like, I think that some of the, like I mentioned, some of the narrative stuff may actually come into play. And this is not something that I base a lot of my basketball betting on, but, you know, some of the veteran experience, the ability to kind of play through whatever and not have their routine knocked off is probably going to be helpful. I think that's where you might see some upsets, like Toronto Raptors have a pretty young initiator in star in Siakam, and Celtics have you know, Tatum and Brown. How are they going to perform away from home and with you know, these unusual circumstances, especially against a Philly team that has real high talent ceiling. So, like, if the Celtics get the Sixers in that 3-6 matchup to start, like, that's an upset I could see right off the bat, because some of these younger guys already, there's a narrative about playoff experience and veteran experience, and you know, Tatum and Brown have made the playoffs every year that they've been with the Celtics. But I think that some of the cohesiveness and bringing a sense of normalcy, you'll see the advantage with guys like LeBron or Kawhi, just kind of that quiet, steady, going to get you their points and assists and not get rattled if they lose a game to start, you know, like game 1 or something. They won't get knocked off their line, whereas some of the younger guys might. So I guess the shorter answer there is you should technically see more upsets seeding wise, but I just with the away team not being able to kind of do like the steal one on the road and then go back home type thing, the lower seed, I just don't see quite as many unless it's some of those specific instances with younger guys.
Okay, and I'm not remind me, because I haven't really looked too much in depth, and I probably should. It's not good to admit when you're doing a podcast that you haven't done some of the research here. But in terms of the seeding, like when they advance, it's staying the same. Where like the the winner of the 1-8 plays the 4-5, right? Is that staying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, they don't reseed.
Okay, because I didn't think they, even though they probably easily could in this scenario, like probably easier than before. I just wasn't sure if they were.
I thought they were gonna. They've been looking into bringing in just the 16 best records.
Yeah.
From competitive balance standpoint, and I thought that they would maybe use this as a chance to do that since things are weird. They did not though. So yeah, it's gonna be standard playoff seeding, no reseeding. I have the odds up here at Bookmaker, and they're taking 8K wax on Lakers. So yeah, when 20K I think for their futures market at Bookmaker, and the Lakers are down to 225. Okay. So they're pretty strong favorites, and I think that kind of lends credence to the LeBron steadies the ship type situation. Danny Green has also been in like 9,000 finals games.
Yeah,
he's basically in a finals game for every team he's played for, which is going to be super helpful. And I think mathematically, but like with basic market prices, the implied probability should be that the Bucks should be the favorite. And I think they're a little bit gun shy on that after the way they kind of crumbled against Toronto last year. They were a couple minutes away from going up 3-0 on the Raptors, and when they lost that overtime game 3, I don't know, the wheels kind of just came off. And Bud, I think I've seen some discourse about his coaching, Mike Budenholzer, and whether or not he has kind of the coaching chops to get them there. So that makes sense. They're a little bit higher price at plus 300. And then Clippers are the next closest at plus 315, which, pretty boring, not exactly going on a limb, but that seems like the S tier for me. They have the least holes, the least amount of questions for me. But you can tell that the market also thinks that some of this veteran leadership is going to be important with teams like the Lakers.
Yeah, and even though LeBron's he didn't make the playoffs last year, with all the miles that he put on the previous 10 years, I'm sure that this 4-month layoff was probably a benefit to him.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing pretty big minutes too, so yeah. I'm guessing I'm thinking, guys, another person. Is this the next question? So next part of the outline, I'm making sure we're not jumping ahead too far. But the next question was about do you see any teams that have a particular edge based on how they're constructed? And this conversation has kind of leaked over into that.
Yeah.
But I think the rest is really going to help teams that have stars that play a high number of minutes. So one guy we see fall apart in the playoffs quite a bit is James Harden. And, that's the running joke with him. But he plays just like an insane amount of minutes across every season. And unflinchingly, really. He doesn't take much time off. He plays deep into the playoffs every year. And it's not just like minutes where he's sitting in the corner waiting for a pass. It's like, 35 to 40% usage minutes. So him getting a 3-month break in the middle of the season is probably going to help his playoff run, I would have to guess. LeBron getting a good rest is going to be important. Another person I could see getting a big benefit would be Chris Paul. Wheels tend to fall off for Chris Paul in the playoffs. And he'll either tweak a hamstring or pull a groin or something. But I think that I would not want to play the Thunder with a well-rested Chris Paul and Danilo Gallinari. they're a really annoying team, and I think people don't realize how well they've played this year in a lot of games. So
Yeah.
I think those type of guys would be the people I'd keep an eye on in terms of a particular edge in the way they're constructed. These high mileage, high usage guys that tend to see some struggles in the playoffs, they're going to come in well rested.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Thunder had like a really, really low over under to start the year too, like wins wise.
They did. Yeah, it was 32, I believe. No, it was even lower. It might have started at 20. It got bet up pretty significantly, but they cleared that by before the All-Star break.
Yeah, which sucks because I'm guessing it didn't get paid out. I'm guessing all those.
It did
guys,
not. It did not get paid out.
That sucks so
yeah.
hard.
Yeah, they canceled all of. Yeah. I had the Blazers under, which got. Here I'll do my victory lap. I also had the Bucks under, so I'm not going to pretend I'm some savant here. But the Blazers under, they lost their two best centers, right off the bat, and then the Oklahoma City over. Once they didn't trade Chris Paul, that was pretty much it. Yeah, they're. What they have listed here is 32.5. I think I got it at 32.
Okay.
But they won they have 40 wins already.
Yeah.
They played 64 games. I mean, they're fifth in the West. So, yeah, I think anyone with a brain was betting on them, and they're over. And then I think a lot of people got on board with the Nets under, just because of the injury situation and Kyrie's health and maybe DeAndre being a little overrated. They ran out of lineup against who they play yesterday? The Heat. No, I forget who they played yesterday, but they ran out of lineup with Chris Chiozza starting. So the Nets have officially mailed in the season. I don't even know why they went to the bubble. A lot of them didn't. So. The win totals didn't get paid out, and the Thunder, I think, like you're saying, came in with pretty low expectations, and they're not a major market team or have kind of the super popular superstars. I think if you Google Chris Paul or do a Twitter search on Chris Paul, I'd say 80% of it is slander at any given moment, which, to be fair, he deserves. So I'm not going to sit here and say as a UNC guy, he went to Wake Forest, and so I'm okay with slandering Chris Paul. Totally fine, but I think you just gotta realize that they're going to be a real pain in the ass to knock out of the playoffs.
Sure. Yeah. When you mentioned Chris Paul, I remember the people somebody was accusing somebody of disobeying the bubble, and everyone was jumping on Chris Paul being the rat.
Chris Paul just minding his own business, just his phone blowing up, getting a million tweets about how he's ratting people out. So, like I said, it's definitely not undeserved. If you get a chance and you hadn't seen it yet, go ahead and Google Chris Paul and Julius Hodge to kind of see where he cemented his legacy. It's one of the all-time basketball nut shots. So he comes by it honestly, but that team. Steven Adams is awesome. He's great, and him and Russell were great, but him and Chris Paul have been awesome. I got a chance to see them live. I went up to a Celtics game and came away super impressed with the coaching. His Billy Donovan's rotations were right. He exploited a ton of mismatches. Gallinari is just a real steady player. He's not going to do anything that's going to make you run out and grab his jersey unless you're super Italian, I guess. But he's fun, and he's good for exploiting a mismatch. So those are the type of guys that in team constructs that I would look out for coming in, or situations where guys are getting players back. So Indiana has Oladipo kind of half in, half out right now. So you got to keep tabs on that. But those would be the teams that I would look for edges that may not be priced in. And I'll just keep rolling with this question about the team construct. I talked a little bit about this in the first spot we did, but the way I kind of do a proxy for playoff success is taking like the three best or highest usage, depending on the situation, players for a team and using them as a proxy. They usually play anywhere from about 48 to 53% of the total team minutes. They play a ton of minutes. Those top three guys, they're going to have the ball in their hand the most, or they're going to be impacting their team the most. But it's a great proxy if you're doing like a thought exercise about which team has better chance in a series. What I also look for is, okay, who's starting the offense? I think we've seen teams that have been really good in the regular season struggle when they have a real guard-heavy initiated offense. Like everyone kind of has seen Golden State go from Steph Curry running the show to Kevin Durant running the show in the playoffs, right? It's why LeBron's been so successful in the playoffs, because you kind of want your initiator to be bigger and be able to survive some of the more physical playoff play. Not to be too Celtic-centric here, but a guy I can think of is like when Isaiah Thomas, when we made the playoffs with him, and you watched, we played the Bulls one series, and Rondo was like ripping his jersey coming around screens, right? He was bullying him. He couldn't get anything. He wasn't getting as many calls at the rim. And you just kind of realize that a smaller guard like an IT or a Trae Young is going to struggle, whereas even a Chris Paul, to a certain extent, he's a little more savvy at drawing those fouls, as opposed to like a LeBron, a Luka, a Giannis, or a Kawhi, where they're big physical guys. Another guy I love in the playoffs is Jimmy Butler. Big physical player, two-way player, can distribute and can create their own shot when necessary. Those are the guys that I would start with as like baselines for teams that are going to be successful in the playoffs. And then you see what they have added around them for complementary players. LeBron's got Danny Green, which is just, he's like one of the perfect players to play with LeBron. Can guard 1 through 3, great in transition defense, so they don't give up a ton of easy buckets. Shoots like 45% on catch and shoot threes. Literally refuses to dribble, so just gets it right back to LeBron. That's the type of construct that you need. Or like it was Lowry, Kawhi, and Marc Gasol, or Lowry, Kawhi, and Siakam, depending on what you were looking at last year for the Raptors. It's a great trio right there to start. And Milwaukee this year has Bledsoe, Middleton, and Giannis. Again, really, really strong balance amongst them, offensively and defensively. They're anchored by Lopez in the post. And they've been dominant this year. I think their schedule adjusted net rating is like almost 10, which is huge. That's a couple ticks under like 16, 17 or 15, 16 Warriors level. I think there are some legit concerns with Giannis in the playoffs or Budenholzer in the playoffs, but that trio of guys would be someone that I'd be willing to bet on long term for playoff success.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Actually, I'm in a chat with Whale Capper, and he wanted me to ask what the Celtics are supposed to do to stop Giannis. He also said it was he also said it was a trick question, but please ask anyway. So. Right. Yeah.
And
actually to interrupt you, my answer was that they'll need to play a 1-9 zone, meaning a COVID 1-9 zone, and have the Celtics 12th man catch it and give it to Giannis. That was my solution.
That's the perfect system for me. Yeah, I think that
not that you want to root for that, but that was probably the best way for them to have success.
That's really been the only way to stop him this season. In the games where he struggled, man, you just got to set up a wall for when he gets that full head of steam into the paint, and then you got to hope that he doesn't get a favorable whistle, and you got to hope he doesn't bury jump shots. we've had games where we've been successful against Giannis where he's just running full speed into Tice. And he's our big German center. And there are some games where Tice is about to foul out in the third quarter. And there's some games where Giannis goes, 4 for 14 with 4 free throws. It's really just, what type of whistle you're getting that night, whether or not you can stop Giannis. Honestly, it's similar to Harden. Like if he has a good whistle and some of his jumpers are falling, there's no stopping them and how they play. So if we get there, I'll be happy enough. Whale Capper, thank you for for bringing that. Honestly, if you talk to any Celtics fan, though, they're more worried about Middleton, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but George fucking Hill kills us every time we play them. I swear to God, George Hill and Chris Middleton have missed like 2 threes total in the last 2 years we've played them. So those are the guys that are giving me nightmares when we play the Bucks. And you kind of just have to tip your hat to Giannis and let him, run roughshod over whoever is guarding him.
Although, I guess if you were playing him, that means you were advancing at least 1 or 2 series, so that's probably a positive.
Yeah, that's best case scenario for me. I mean, yeah. we have a kid from Tennessee, Grant Williams, and then we have Shemi Ojale, who they're legit brick shithouses. They are massive, and they got 12 fouls between them. So my thing is over a 7-game series, I want Giannis icing up after every single game, just wailing away on him, making him, earn those free throws. I don't think there's a much better play than that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's. I'm going to kind of merge the last 2 questions, the NBA part here. How, in your opinion, how do you see this season ending? Do you see it ending with a champion, or do you see it ending because the virus has just taken over too many teams and they just say we can't do this? And if you do think it's going to, let's just say it lasts. I guess you could answer all of this at once, but let's just say it. Even if you don't think this is going to end well, let's just presume it does. Who do you like? I guess presuming everyone stays healthy, but that's a big matzo ball right there.
Right.
But how do you see this all playing out? Where do you see this playing out? When September, October ends, when the season ends?
Yeah. So I think. So far, the way I've seen things happening and the way it's set up in Disney, I think there's a chance it could go smoothly. They seem to be testing regularly, acting quickly. They have everyone in the bubble pretty much that's going to be in the bubble. And they just, said the last 2 days of testing, there's been 0 positive cases. So the assumption being that everyone that's going to be in this bubble is in there and that they're handling cases beforehand and, the staff has been vetted and they're not going to bring in just regular Disney staff without testing. They kibosh that idea. That makes me, and also just wanting to watch basketball, makes me think that there is a chance this could go smoothly.
Okay.
My thing the entire time has been they want the public perception to be that it's going to go smoothly. There is no contingency plan. What happens if LeBron gets it? I think it is a real house of cards that they have no plan for, a star getting it, or B, it running rampant through a single team in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Do you cancel that series? There are it's buttoned up right now, but if it comes unbuttoned, I don't know that they can finish it, honestly, because they're, also if people have it and it's not as locked down, are you going to risk LeBron getting it with some of the long-term lung impacts that you're seeing? I can't imagine the loss that the league would take financially from LeBron never being able to play again from this bubble would be disastrous.
Yeah,
right? And not to be negative about it. But.
Yeah, or really, almost all of the I couldn't name all the top 10 or 15 NBA stars off the top of my head, but I'm guessing most, if not all of them, are in Orlando.
Yeah.
right now. So, not even just LeBron, but like any of these guys.
Right. You
Um,
have some of the best young talent all together, and it's going well so far, and it seems like they're handling. I just don't think that they have a way to get off the ship if it starts taking on water.
yeah,
Is the best analogy I can use. Um, so I guess the best way to put it is it's either going to go pretty smoothly with very few bumps, or it's going to go off the rails and go off the rails as hard as possible when it does go off the
sure.
rails, because there's no backup plan if a team has to miss. There's no way of retroactively knowing who everyone was in contact with when they were contagious. It's just the nature of the disease makes it that we know about, makes it that if things go bad, they're going to go very poorly if they try and continue, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm guessing like this probably applies to all professional athletes because I think it's probably known in baseball, but I imagine this happens in every sport where guys are cheating on their wives. So it's like, how are you going to prevent these guys from not introducing like new people into this bubble? Like I don't even know how they're going about it right now, or if they're monitoring the players.
They are, yeah, they are monitoring. I don't think it's going to be an issue the first couple weeks. I think I'm interested to see how things go when we hit like mid-September and you've been in Orlando away from your family for 2 months.
Yeah.
And what type of mental toll that takes on people. And they're professionals and it's their job, but they're also people, and it's going to be a grind. And a lot of these guys actually, even with not even with the cheating on people, a lot of these guys are just like 22, 23-year-old millionaire professional athletes.
Yeah.
Probably like they probably don't struggle with dating as is, So the availability is certainly there. I think a lot of the guys that are in the NBA right now and are in the bubble, at least the ones that are most front facing, seem like they have their priorities in order and understand that flying a girl in from LA is not worth all the trouble right now that it would get you in if you got caught. I think that trouble becomes much more worth it as you get, like I said, 6, 7, 8 weeks in Orlando, Florida,
Yeah.
and all you've been doing is golfing and fishing. For me, that would be the dream. I see them out there.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. But I also don't have the ability to go on Instagram and have girls that I could just be like, hey, I'll fly you to where I am. So I definitely can't exactly put myself in their shoes. So right now I think they'll be good, with that aspect. I don't know how we're looking. Although in that regard, a lot of the teams, the risk also minimizes teams getting eliminated. So after the first round, the player pool is significantly smaller and the stakes are higher. So I'm hoping that ramps up that responsibility and mitigates that risk across. You just have less opportunities to make those mistakes.
True, that makes sense. All right, so let me just propose a hypothetical. If I were to offer you the Lakers or the Lakers versus Bucks, Clippers versus Bucks, or the field, what are you thinking there? In terms of NBA Finals, presuming Giannis doesn't get the COVID,
Yeah.
presuming the LeBron doesn't get it or AD doesn't get it.
I would put Clippers, Bucks in right now. Those, I think that in terms of the team makeups, we talked a little bit about team structure or how they're constructed. I don't think there's anyone in the East that presents a major issue roster-wise to Milwaukee. They've been that good all year, barring Middleton or Bledsoe having the wheels completely fall off offensively. I think they're gonna be there in September, October, and I think what we're seeing from a healthy Paul George and Kawhi presents some massive issues for LA in terms of how they handle that defensively, because LeBron's going to have to guard one of those guys. And that's going to really take a toll on him, because both those guys can create their own shot. They're big, they're physical, they're talented. So I think having both those guys on the wing is really going to present some issues. I also like some of the moves that they made to shore up their bench. Reggie Jackson is not necessarily a starting NBA point guard, but he's not a bad backup point guard to have. And they added him for the break, and they added one of the Morris brothers from the Knicks. And I think that shored up the bench a little bit. I really like the energy that they have at guard and center with Bev and Montrezl Harrell. I think those guys are kind of intense enough to continue to be playing at playoff level, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of being in the bubble. Whereas I think some of the guys like Dwight or JaVale, or JR or Dion Waiters, who all four of those guys play for the Los Angeles Lakers, which seems like a prank team you would make in NBA 2K with those guys on it. I bet you it is either the dumbest or best conversation locker room possible. I would love to just see LeBron's face, like as Dion Waiters and Dwight Howard debated vaccines. Like Dwight came out and said he doesn't believe in vaccines, and it's just like, sure, dude, of course you don't. And obviously that has no bearing on his basketball play, but I just don't. I think that if I had to pick a team that's going to be playing with that type of intensity in September in the bubble, it's going to be the guys on the Clippers over the Lakers. And outside of, I think the Rockets would be the Rockets and the Raptors would be the only two teams I could see like maybe pulling a major upset. Rockets have some really talented players. Just their team is weird as shit. They don't have any centers. They play PJ Tucker at center. So like I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information. If they get hot from three though, they have really good players. So I could see them winning a series, especially if like one of Kawhi or Paul George comes up a little gimpy. And then the Raptors are just really good, and Nick Nurse is an excellent coach. So if he outcoached Bud last year, there is a small chance he could do it again. But yeah, I would take Clippers Bucks over the field right now.
Okay. All right. Well, let's glance on the WNBA. I know that I had some questions here, but I know that I already know the answers to some of these, so we probably won't go too in depth, because I know that as far as WNBA prep goes, you haven't really done much. I don't think a lot of people have, but the season kind of snuck up on you, from what I understand.
It did sneak up, and it's just been hard to prep because, unlike I mentioned before in NBA, we're going from the regular season to the playoffs, right? There's no off-season trades.
Yeah.
The WNBA had the off-season and the bubble roster changes. So I think it's like right now 3 of the top 5 players aren't playing in the WNBA this season.
Okay.
They're currently in a battle with it's a shit show with their former MVP, or last year's MVP and finals MVP, Elena Deladon. She had some lingering health issues. They don't necessarily agree with her doctor's assessment, and they're battling her on coming to play 20 games. So guys, what are we doing here? That's not great to push like the face of the game into the bubble. I don't know if the league ownership is great, or their decision makers are great across the board. So that's weird. But Elena Deladon isn't going. Jonquel Jones isn't going. She plays for the Connecticut Sun. She's my favorite player. I'm a big Sun fan. They're the local team, but she's probably the second best defensive player in the NBA with Griner. I'd like to make people. A bunch of my friends have kind of jumped on WNBA teams and have asked for teams to root for, and I like to make NBA comparisons because that's the easiest thing for people to come from.
Sure.
And Jonquel plays a lot like Joel Embiid with a little higher motor. She's a center who completely changes the defensive layout of your team, and she'll hit threes from above the break, and she's just not going. So to me, like the Sun, I don't even know where to start with them. And they picked up DeWanna Bonner from Phoenix, and there's been a lot of shuffling of players and players not going. And then another wrinkle, the team that I like the most is going to be Seattle Storm. They're stellar, and they have Brianna Stewie from UConn back, and she's the MVP from 2 years ago who tore her Achilles in international play. And she may not be 100%, but I've discussed this a little bit with some people, and I think that her game is a little more savvy than it is just dominant physical attributes. Like someone like Diamond DeShields, who's a guard who's much faster than everyone, or like Sabrina Ionescu. I think that they would rely on their athleticism a little bit. Stewie is like taller than everybody and just lights out from anywhere on the floor. I think she's going to survive coming off that Achilles injury better than most players would. But so I love the Storm. I think they probably win, barring anything crazy going on. But they can't have their coach come with them because he's high risk. So what type of impact? I have no idea. I have no idea like what type of impact that makes. I don't have a great handle on WNBA coach rankings outside of like maybe I think in the outline here we talked about who's bad.
Yeah.
But just that's been my real prep the last probably 24 hours since I told you I haven't prepped much for WNBA. Is just really going through the rosters, seeing who has different players. The Washington Mystics were dominant last year. I think they had like a 11 net rating for the season. And the next highest was like 5. They dominated everyone in the playoffs. Well, outside of Elena Delle Donne not playing, they also have 3 other starters not coming back. So, all right, now we have to adjust to all that going on. It's a ton of uncertainty at the moment. I think I'm going to let a few games go through and see what type of changes catch our eye. Okay. If you have a player base ranking, and I want to shout out a great writer, analyst, P Residual on Twitter. He just came up with a WNBA single metric. So similar to like ESPN's RPM or like Jacob Goldstein's PIPM for WNBA. He came up with a great metric, single player metric for players, and that's going to help you adjust faster if you're going to try and quantify stuff. Okay. I haven't tested his specific metric, but player ratings are important when you're betting basketball, and I think it would be a great baseline if you're just starting out. And that's all well and good, but then there's the fit into the team and aging and coaching. So you kind of have to move those, readjust from your priors, and I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. Just to be blunt.
Okay. Now you don't have to you don't have to necessarily reveal your secret sauce if you do have this. Yeah. But do you have your own like internal like power rankings, like a number that you put on on these teams, either WNBA or NBA? Do you do that?
So I have a team metric that I blend in to some other stuff because I think that capturing things at the team level can help you pick up some things that player specific ratings might miss, similar to coaching. That's why like even if you look at some, like, if you just use, let's say, like margin of victory, margin of victory, average margin of victory is one of the best predictors of future success at a team level. It's not great, but it's outside of all basic numbers. It's right there. If you just factor in win percentage as well as margin of victory, you start to capture some of those like narrative intangibles or things that might not be captured. So winning close games is not going to be captured in margin of victory, but winning percentage is going to have that, right? So similar to that approach, having a team, I don't know if I call them power ranking, but having a team number to kind of, I guess power rating to say how good they are is a good baseline to have and capture some things that I think sometimes you might miss in player ratings.
Okay. So I know the last pod you were talking about a lot of WNBA coaches that are horrible. So like I don't know how I don't really know the turnover in terms of WNBA coaches, but I'm presuming like any other sport, there's probably been at least some. So like presuming there has been, are there any coaches that like at least in your initial research you think like might improve their team's success?
So I saw this question and I was going through some of the coaches, and I do have a good, at least one good anecdote, and that is that the New York Liberty have hired a guy that was a high school coach and coached at a couple different levels, and then went to Harvard grad school. So he's a real nerd.
Okay.
And
gotta love those nerds.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't say much as I talk about, all the math I'm doing in WNBA about nerds, but I mean like nerd in that like he really cares about like academics, and he's also interesting because he has some real consultant-ish jargon in that like he talks about psychology and setting winning frameworks. Like I think his background is like sports psychology, and while I think that's a worthwhile endeavor from a coaching perspective, I'm really interested if he sold the Liberty kind of like a bill of goods on like, hey, like I can tell you XYZ about motivation based off of like the Myers-Briggs personality test or something. Like I as someone who works for a big company in his day job, I'm just wary of some of the terms that I saw that he used to describe his approach, and I'm very interested to see. I mean, they were the worst team in the league or second worst team in the league last season, the New York Liberty. So they really have nowhere to go but up. But I am interested. I'm going to be watching him in particular to see how much of that kind of consultant jargon stays with him as he, proceeds in the bubble. They have it's Isaiah Thomas in the front office there, and they have a pretty short leash on coaches. They go through coaches pretty fast. They just drafted the girl from Oregon, Sabrina, who is awesome. She's electric. She had like 1 billion triple doubles for Oregon. And they probably would have won it all this year in college. So she's going to be a rookie. So you have that rookie. You have another rookie. They drafted a point guard last year, Asa Durr, and then they lost their ball hog center, Tina Charles, who is the former MVP who still thinks she's an MVP. So there's a huge usage gap that they have to fill that I think will be interesting. So that coach is going to be my coach to watch is the guy from the New York Liberty.
Okay. All right.
I think there was one I did want to touch on. You mentioned here, are there still many betting edges left in the WNBA? Compared to 5-10 years ago, I have no idea because it's more like the last 3 years for me.
Okay.
But I will say, be wary of anyone that is telling you that WNBA is a soft market. I see that take a lot. I see this example that, hey, I can beat WNBA. No one bets it. I don't think that's as true as people think it is. As you go along in the season, those edges really get tight. similar to NBA, where the market is on top of it. The books are putting out solid openers, and they're getting hammered pretty quick by people with a clue. And I don't think, like, I remember Fez used to sell his WNBA.
Yeah,
man, two Fez shout outs in one podcast. That's a real
that reminds me. I'm wondering if that guy who's doing the bingo card is gonna throw Fez on that bingo card for drinking there. So I really
that's
don't.
My buddy.
Yeah. Oh, that's your okay. Subtle.
Okay. Yeah, he's the one. It's his burner. Okay. But. Yeah, I told him I did not want to see that because I would just be thinking about that the entire time. I'm sure you can get some terrible, terrible bingo ones from us. His one for the TWBC podcast was really good. I enjoyed that. But yeah, Fez, go ahead and scratch that second one off. But yeah, anyone that's telling you that that WNBA is an inefficient market and that no one's paying attention or betting it, it's not true. Are there edges? Yeah, sure. Like any market, you're going to find some things to bet if you have a clue. But this idea that you can just jump right in and use like public rankings and just figure it out is not wholly accurate. So if you're new to it and just trying to get into it, just don't get sold that bill of goods about, hey, it's a soft market, anyone can beat it.
So the one thing that I didn't mention on the outline that I didn't really think about until now is that with all of these sports going on at once, I could see maybe like some wiggle room, like maybe like this market isn't paid attention to as much as like NBA, because now that I'm sure there's going to be more money bet on NBA than WNBA, so maybe they're more focused on NBA than WNBA. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure how that's I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out.
I would say WNBA would go down to the lower totem pole. The one thing with that is you're gonna you could probably pick off some early season lines or some injury news a little bit faster on WNBA, and I think one thing that's interesting that I've been learning a little bit about are golf markets. Golf markets, like, they don't even offer the same matchups across all different books, and when they copy them from book to book, they screw them up, and whether or not they cancel the bet or don't cancel the bet is kind of on a whim. I think they would just, instead of incurring any risk from being so spread thin, they're just gonna either boot you or just keep the limits real low until the lines get hammered. I'm more worried with all those sports going on, like the timing of betting, because the overlap in terms of market for WNBA and NBA, kind of that 11 a.m. feeding frenzy I was talking about. I mean, basically, honestly, from 9 a.m. Eastern time to 11 a.m., the board lights up. So the other thing that's interesting with that is that the time of the games changed. So you're going to have games as early as 1:30 p.m. Eastern time in the NBA.
Yeah.
So that 11 a.m. thing was great when I was sleeping in and like just checking it at my desk at my office. But I think, the 1:30 tips, overnights are going to get hit pretty hard. Early morning stuff. I know there are some big names that get into accounts, especially off screen, and PPHs, like 6 a.m. That might even be earlier. But they're just going to go with the risk mitigation approach, honestly. That's the only way I can see it, especially like totals as opposed to sides. They'll probably let you fire into sides all day. Totals, they're going to keep the limits low or not put up until last second. But that's the cynic in me. The thing I would look for, if let's say you haven't, originated or worked with anyone who's originated an edge, and are trying to grind stuff out, I would look for those opportunities on mispricing, maybe with the new baseball rules. I think you saw that everything's going to action.
Yeah.
Like
That's very
I would
fascinating.
look for some. Yep. So I would look for some opportunities there, maybe in derivative markets. So in prop markets, I think you're going to see some worse numbers. Full game markets, they're either going to lower the limits or just not put them up until last second. But if you are looking to grind something out with the kind of feeding frenzy that you were mentioning with everything going on, I would start in like the derivative markets or something that's already been going on, like golf. Sorry to all my buddies who are in the golf market for encouraging people to go bet with you guys, but those, there are so many more opportunities for mistakes and bad lines there. MLS might be another one where you could potentially get some because you can bet that a couple different ways. Soccer, right? There's three-way.
Yeah.
Asian handicaps, which I think you can still say. I don't really know the correct term for that one. I've always been told Asian handicap.
Yeah. I don't think that.
So I'm going to go with that being okay.
I don't think they've outlawed that yet.
No, I don't. Yeah, not trying to do like a low-hanging PC joke, but that's the only term I have for it. So
no, that's what it's called. I mean, that's yeah.
Yeah. So
that's what's
the gist there is that you would lay like a quarter of a point, and so half your bets on pick and half your bets on -1 or minus 0.5.
-0.5. So,
yeah. So things like that. Like I think Houston. And MLS was -0.25 against the Galaxy, right? You could maybe find a way to kind of price those out with that versus the three-way market to find some things, especially as the more major sports are going to ramp up. But I'm telling you, full game spreads are just going to be a battle no matter how many sports are in play, just because the book always has the edge on how they can take their action.
True. Yeah, and like you said, the limits, you could see limits probably getting a little lower with all these competing markets merging together.
Right.
Okay, so as you take a sip of that beer, this is a good segue into the beer exchange that we did. And so, like, I'll cut the podcast off in terms of I'll tell people at the 112 mark, hey, if you want to stop, that's fine. Right now we're going to talk about a little bit about beer. We have a few more listener questions after that, but beer is a passion of mine. I think it's a passion of yours. I don't know. I think you've demonstrated, at least based on the first three that I've had here, that you have some pretty good taste in beer. And
Charlotte's a great beer town, and Chicago is also a really, really good beer spot. I talked to Burns about the Chicago beer scene. I talked to another one of my friends that I met through kind of gambling about the Chicago beer scene, and the number of breweries up there is outlandish. It's huge.
Yeah.
And I thought there were a lot down here, but man, it's crazy up there. And you graciously sent me a sampling of them and that I'm going through, and it's been awesome. I really appreciate you doing that. I want to say thank you for that. But just venturing out into some of these different ones, there are enough good ones here where I'll just go down to the bodega and be able to grab like a 4-pack of like Hop Drop, right? So I don't really venture out to go like to World of Beer or places and try other ones. I'm just a little lazy like that when I have good beer available. But I was drinking, good segue, easily my favorite one that you sent me is the Gummy Colada.
Okay.
And I did not expect that based on the name. I honestly was going to go at like anything gummy or colada. I was thinking super sweet, super synthetic with the gummy. Like I was expecting. It was the most natural, way to cut the flavor of an IPA that I've ever had. It was awesome. It was smooth. It was a great summer beer. It was great.
So people who might not be familiar with that, that's a beer from Noon Whistle. They're based for anyone that lives around this area, they're in Lombard, Illinois. Not too, probably 30 minutes, 35 minutes away from me. On one of my days off, I drove there because I heard that the only way to get those cans was to go there in person. And I wanted to load up on. I think I bought 2 4-packs, and Did I have one on? No, I didn't have one on tap. That was my regret that I didn't have one on tap. That one surprised me because I wasn't really like my expectations were kind of on both sides. Like, oh, it could be really good or really bad. So
I thought it was going to be gimmicky. I'm going to be honest, man. Yeah. I had it. I think when I was grilling out over the weekend, and I just I remember being like, this is like multiple times being like, wow, I just like blown away at how good that was. I also did the Hop Maui New England IPA, and I like that. That one was good. I had that. That's a 6.1 here. It was kind of the standard New England IPA, but I did like that it wasn't quite as bitter at the end to get that kind of that you can almost. It's not a taste, but like the cloudy kind of bitterness after is slightly different than a regular IPA. But they did a pretty good job, the Hop Maui one, cutting that bitterness at the end. So like if you put like a standard New England IPA and that one in front of me, I would take that one just because it has kind of smoother finish.
Sure.
But it was a good drink. And then the other one I jotted down that I want to talk about was the Lighten Up Hefe.
Oh yeah, the Hef. Yeah, Lighten Up Hef.
Yeah. Awesome. Usually those have like a real kind of lingering. It has to always kind of get me at the end. Like I like them, and then like at the end of the sip, I'm like, I don't know if I would order that again. This one was great. I think that there's a little bit of fruit, or they lighten it up with something in that one in particular. So those two, and then this the crispy cake, it have to be my top three.
Okay. Have you had the Belgian Red yet, by chance, or no?
No, the Belgian Red I'm saving. I have a friend from Minnesota, and I told them I would drink it when we hung out because they were like. She's from Michigan, but lived in Minnesota, and told her I had one, and so I'm saving that one for when I drink with them. But that one's your favorite, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned Michigan, Minnesota, you can only buy that one in Wisconsin, so that's why I sent that to you because I knew that you couldn't. I knew that there was no way you could get that unless you actually travel to Wisconsin.
Yeah, so she said that in that area that people go nuts for that brewery.
Yeah.
Because you can only get it in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay. So, and I mentioned to her the other brands of beer that I got, and that one resonated. So I'm going to say, I saved that one. And then actually I'll crack the blackberry apricot ale.
Okay.
You sent me a nice variety, and I think one of the questions you mentioned was, am I a seasonal beer drinker? And that's like the number one thing I am. Like summer, all New England IPAs, or sessions, or maybe something with the citrus. Like if I had to pick like a generic one, it would be like a Sam Summer would be like, something with a little bit of citrus in it for summer beers. Especially Sam Summer to me is like a good dinner beer because it's not like super citrusy or sweet, but it's got that little bit of summer kick. And then in the winter, it's the wheat beers, or like a more sturdy IPA, like West Coast IPA. Like the Hop Drop is a great winter beer.
Sure. Yeah. So to give you a small sample, you gave me 9 different beers. You gave me 3 of the Hop, Drop, and Roll, and 2 of the Juicy J, and then 7 others. And I've only had 3 of them so far. I had 2 of I don't know if you probably didn't see me pouring it, but while you were talking, I poured the Juicy J 30 minutes ago. I've already finished it.
Yeah.
And I'm putting that. I'm gonna have to try Juicy J and the Hop, Drop, and Roll again, but they're kind of my 1 and 1A with Pernicious behind that, and then it's not even an insult because they're all 3 of them are really good so far.
I thought you would like the Juicy J, especially based on some of the ones you sent me.
Yeah.
It kind of has that orange juice pour, like that thick orange those things will hit you like a bus too. Those things are stiff. I think they're only like 6.5, 7%, but those things, they get me.
Yeah,
I think they
this one's more bit like 668 IBU and 6.3. But still, it's
6.3.
yeah,
I
it's
think it's
still
just because they go down easier than
yeah,
like they go down. You
yeah,
could. I end up just drinking like 5 or 6 of those in a sitting, like the pint glasses, and you're
yeah,
feeling good when you get up.
yeah, and yeah, I'm definitely wanting to go to North Carolina now to like do a tour of their breweries because just like, and I'm looking forward to the remaining six that I haven't tried, but like based
Yeah,
on the first three, I'm really excited to.
those are all. Pernicious is up in Asheville, and it started a couple years ago, and they actually have a great sour. Their sour brewery is called the Funkatorium, which I think
Okay.
is an awesome name. And you can go tour that, and they had they had the kind of brewery restaurant mix in there up in Asheville. And Asheville's a beautiful town. I always say that it's like the my favorite like weekend spot because you can do enough in 48 hours where you feel like you've seen Asheville without like nonstop having to drop everything to get to the next tourist trap. But you also don't need to spend a week there to kind of get everything in, right? Like it's a good 48 hours there is great. They have a lot of local food, a lot of local beer, great scenery with the mountains. So Burial is up there. I'm gonna get you some Burials, which are great beers.
Okay.
And Highwire are also up there, which is another good one. And then down here, I sent you the Sycamore one. That's probably the most popular brewery from a social perspective. They're kind of nonstop. Like they probably have, they do like a anniversary thing, and it's probably like, man, thousands of people are there on a Saturday, just nonstop beer. That's a great time. Noda is a little more low key brewery. They have some great, like they have a coffee stout that is excellent. That's going to be my winter. That's the one I'm going to send you in the winter from
Okay.
Noda. They're great.
Okay.
And then the other one I sent, the Legion. Legion's kind of like a hole in the wall brewery. Nice couple little outdoor fire pits and stuff.
Okay.
But Charlotte, the brewery scene is a big one from a social perspective. They're almost more popular than like bars. They're definitely more popular than like clubs. But
Sure.
you can bring I bring Peanut, my dog, to the breweries. The other one that's coming in the next package is Wooden Robot. So Wooden Robot, if you look up like best ranked beers in Charlotte, Wooden Robot's going to have quite a few.
Okay.
That's going to be. I was hoping that they would be in the second stop that I hit for you. But that's going to be in my next one. Wooden Robot is a great brewery
Okay.
too. So
Yeah, I think I've heard. Yeah, I think that was one of the ones that my buddy mentioned because I was throwing a bunch of names to you towards the
they're
beginning
excellent.
of last week. Yeah. So yeah.
And I'll try to go with what you sent me. I just tried the blackberry apricot ale, and it's awesome. Really different flavor. Kind of almost tastes like a little bit like a sour.
Yeah. Yeah.
The feel to it. It's not going to knock off gummy or crispy cakes. I'll tell you that, but it's good.
Yeah, and that's the brewery that's within a mile of me. So yeah,
That's a great one.
yeah they just opened up like a couple years ago. So like the fact that they're dealing with this COVID stuff like right now,
Yeah.
they fortunately like they just started canning like during this. Like they were already planning on starting the canning. So I told them like the canning part to me it was like very crucial in my it's very crucial in my decision making whether or not I'm gonna buy beer from you because
Yeah.
I don't like dealing with like growlers
Real pain in the ass.
I like to buy like 12 pack or sorry not 12 pack but like 12 ounces or 16 ounces in a can. Like I want to be able to drink it in one sitting, like be
Right.
able to do it by myself if possible. Like otherwise, you kind of you almost kind of want to do it with somebody else because some of these beers. I don't know about you, but like there's some of these beers that like if they're serving them in a growler or crowler and they're like 8 or 9%, you need like other people around you to like split it with. So.
Or I need like another 2 days to recover from drinking it all myself. So,
right.
I in between our podcasts, I turned 30, and those 9% hangovers are a little different now, man. They're not great, and
you're already feeling
so
that.
You.
You're already feeling that 30. You're already feeling that 30.
I've been feeling 30 since like 27. It feels like, but. It's a real underwhelming 30th birthday under quarantine. But this has been great. The beer exchange has been awesome. Like I have it, like I said, I've just gotten a little lazy about it because I can just go down to the store. But I was joking with a buddy. He said that anything that comes in these silver cans, like the kind of generic, like brewery silver with the label. He's like, I've never had a bad beer out of one of those because it's from a brewery that's like canning like a fresh batch or like that stuff. Now, this is actually a good opportunity. Like, do you like barrel aged stuff? It's not my favorite.
I was gonna say, unlike a lot of people in the beer community, like that's not my favorite. And like I was hanging out with some friends on Friday. Like one of my friends came into town from Florida. I guess he's been driving around the country, and he came back to the area, and he brought some beers to chop, and like one of them was like a barley wine, and that doesn't really do anything for me. Like for me, that's an overpriced like alcohol that I don't really care too much about.
I'd much rather just get like an actual wine if you know what I mean. Like I'm not. It's not for me.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything for me. Like I once bought a $25 bottle of the barley wine, like at that Flossmoor station that does the Lighten Up Hef, and it didn't do anything for me. Like and it's one of their biggest beers, but the thing is, like, it's not for everybody. So that's the one thing I have to.
There's a big one here that's like Noda does. It's like a pancake stout.
Okay.
Like with a maple syrup type kick to it, and like I don't mind a stout, and like it was good to try, but like I wouldn't be like clamoring to wait in line to go get another 4-pack of them. You know what I mean? The other one, but this is good because I was trying to figure out what I could send you down here that'd be interesting. The other one that I've recently gotten into that's great. There's a brewery around here called Lenny Boy that also does kombucha, and like I don't really have a strong opinion on kombucha one way or the other, but they have a hard kombucha that is awesome, and they have like rotating tap flavors. Okay. I don't know if you've tried any of those. This local place is excellent.
I'm trying to remember if I have. I'm sure I have with all the beers I've tried, but I'm not remembering a specific one that I've tried. But when it comes to the fall season, like what are you looking for? What would you like for me? What are some fall themes that
West Coast IPAs or like a good lager for sure.
Okay.
The West Coast IPAs are tricky because that's when you're kind of getting to the higher percentages.
Yeah.
So like any type of like lager or red that isn't gonna like kick my ass on like theoretically if we're watching football on a Saturday or Sunday, who knows if that's actually gonna happen. Those would be in my wheelhouse. I'm excited for this red. From Wisconsin. That's going to be. I'll follow up with that on Twitter because I'm pumped about that one.
I have a special glass that I use when I drink my red. It's like actually from the brewery itself.
Oh, nice.
So like
you mentioned that, and I feel like my glassware is underwhelming. I'm going to re-up that for our next one. We talked about this. Trying to just touch base on regrouping for the bubble, and then once we get a few games in and we start the playoffs, maybe doing another quick 30-minute one on playoff outcomes or if anything's changed. If you have time, I think it'd be a way to do it. And I'll be through all the beers. The red and the honey I've actually are the two that you sent me that honey one that's 9.3 or 9.5%.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, those I schedule those ones out. So I think either tomorrow for the weekend or the weekend after, I'll be doing it. I'm actually going to be able to go down to Wilmington, North Carolina, to the beach, and there are a couple breweries down there in August. So I'm going to snag one or two things for you down there for our next exchange.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, and I would recommend, if you want to go through real quick for people how you did it. It was awesome.
Oh yeah. So that's a good point. I was actually more nervous about the packing of it and having things break versus like the legality of it. Because I know that it's technically not legal.
Then this is all parody.
This is a parody account. This is a parody pod. Anyone that ever listens to this pod knows that it's a parody pod.
I don't think it'll be much of a sell to say that on the joke.
I mean, yeah, this is kind of like OJ if I did it. If I did it, this is how I would do it.
Theoretically, if you were to send beer.
If I were to send beer to somebody, yes, I was I think we had been talking about this for a couple months. I feel like,
at least a month.
And I'll be honest with you, I thought I was gonna chicken out. Like I thought, like, all right, I'm just not gonna do this. Like I'm just worried about something happening with it. But I finally just decided, like, all right, fuck it. I've talked it up so much, I've hyped it up so much, I'm gonna do it. And there's some good site online, and I've talked to Dave Hess, Audacity of Hoops. He's a good guy.
A beer legend, that guy. He knows his stuff.
On Untapped, like he has the best write-ups of beers on Untapped that I've
the man
of anyone that I've talked to. And like when I went to California last year, he was the one who recommended a beer that when I was in the Stanford area of California. There was a brewery that I would have never heard of, and it was within walking distance of the 21st Amendment brewery that I went to on my own. I lost track. I lost track of what I was saying there, but
so you asked him for some advice on packing.
So I saw some of his, saw what he did, and like the thing that if you're gonna send beer, hypothetically, if you're gonna send beer, you want to make sure you pack it as tight as you can. So what I did with yours, and you did the same thing, was first you put it in a Ziploc bag, each beer, each can in a separate bag. And you gave me all cans. I gave you one bottle. I think cans would probably work better.
It definitely minimizes your risk.
Because I feel like puncturing can isn't going to be as easy to do as a bottle breaking, because with how they handle packages, you can only imagine how many different times your package is touched in a given 2 or 3 day cycle. Another thing was that I read was, and I sent it to you on a Monday, reading that if you sent it on a Thursday or Friday, it could be sitting in a warehouse for an extra couple of days.
I sent yours on a Monday, but that was not intentional, but it worked out. So we'll take it.
So, and they also say don't send it in hot temperatures, but there's like really no way to avoid that. Like right now, but I wanted to make sure that So first of all, I put it in a Ziploc bag. Then I wrapped it in bubble wrap, and then I wrapped it in like 3 or 4 rubber bands per beer. So like, I think you got like close to 50 rubber bands.
I didn't use all the rubber bands back. And then fine. I think the big thing. So then you put some stuffing, some newspaper and stuff. The big thing for me was the partitions. So you put 2 pieces of cardboard inside the cardboard box to keep them separate and minimize how much they were bouncing around. I think that was the key for me.
That's something, like a lot of these things I didn't think about until I was like reading more about it, because I didn't want to screw up my first order. I didn't want to screw up this the first time I did it. So now that I've done it once, like I've already got like one lined up with Jort Sports, where I'm going to be doing. He lives in Maine, So like he's gonna give me some stuff like around that area.
Yeah. Oh, there's some good. Get some good Allagash ones, and they do a lot of seasonal ones up at Allagash. Yeah, and then I think the other thing for anyone that's doing it, the cool thing is like once someone makes the initial packing, you just go back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you already have the stuff now. So for
Yeah.
me, like I literally just saved everything you sent and then put stuff back in it and sent it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cut off the label and send it back. So it's a real smooth process theoretically if you're going to send beer via FedEx or
Yeah,
some
do,
sort of
and do it,
service.
and yeah, and that's another thing. You have to do it via FedEx. I think UPS was mentioned, but you can't do USPS for it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to. But I would recommend.
that.
I would recommend finding a local FedEx and doing it if you were going to do it, which we don't.
Yeah. I
which
mean,
we don't condone, but.
It was smooth. So, all right. Well, we can wrap up with these with the final question. So we did
Sure.
Occam's and then horse.
Yeah,
mentioned
his
esports.
yeah, and he also he mentioned a final question here about the favorite Overwatch League team. I'm guessing that's an esports thing.
It is. Yeah, it is. So esports, video games. To those of us who may not be well versed, I think my big takeaway from that is that Twitch is a solid product. Streaming this stuff, I had a sports itch that was actually scratched by Counter-Strike Go, which is a very popular global game. Across a lot of different continents. It's a really popular Brazilian team. I mean, I was watching Counter-Strike games with and the streaming numbers were at like 75K at like 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. 75,000 people watching it, which is crazy. And the market's like limited. I think Chris was taking like up to like 5K, maybe. Pinnacle was at 5K. They're not small. And the stats available are good. I enjoyed it. I'm not particularly good at it yet. Hopefully I get better. I really enjoyed Counter-Strike. I think Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Overwatch, and Dota would be the biggest markets off the top of my head. Overwatch is I think people who made Halo. Pretty interesting game. I will say that my favorite Overwatch team is certainly not Atlanta because they win as big dogs and lose as favorites, and they drive me insane. So the Atlanta Overwatch team was hell bent on making sure that I made no money betting Overwatch, and they did a really good job. Good for them. They nailed it.
So they were the true high variance team there.
They drive me insane. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, and it was a little weird because they usually do these tournaments in person, and so then they had to do them over the internet, and it was crazy because with these LAN ones, there were some teams that all just lived in a house together and played, and they were getting like demonstrably better than the teams that were all spread out and playing solo. And then there were some other things like, I was winning a bet pretty handedly. It was a best of three. It's similar to scoring to tennis where there are individual rounds and you play first to 16 out of 30 rounds. And then there are 3 maps, so best of 3, similar to like sets and points in tennis, right?
Yeah.
And team I bet on was doing extremely well. And then they had a pause in the action, and one of the players' power just went out in his city that he was in. And so they had to have a coach come in and play for him, just like an alternate. And then they proceeded to lose like horribly after they were like cruising for a victory. So just little things like having to deal with power outages or like one guy's computer just actually in the middle of a match, a player's computer got like a Windows update, which I had never. That was wild. It was an endeavor for sure. I don't think I'm going to give it up just yet because I do enjoy it. It's probably going to go on the back burner with NBA, but esports, if you haven't gone into it yet, I would at least check out Twitch and see some of the like the highest viewed channels. It is an interesting platform relative to some of the TV. I think if you go on Twitter, you see a lot of people complaining about TV broadcasts, and myself included, about some of the NBA broadcasts. Twitch allowing individual content creators to do their own streaming is interesting, and it's cool to hear that type of analysis from people who are still passionate about it. Whereas if you're listening to like Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson cry about Joel Embiid shooting threes instead of contested hook shots, it drives me insane. And these guys are excited about the sport. It's still like up and coming for a lot of them. So I did enjoy that, and I would check it out and direct all your esports questions to Horse.
Horse on the shore.
Send all of your esports questions to Horse. He loves that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I don't remember who said it, but it might have been Seth, or I don't know. But I feel like I heard it from somebody that said that esports was going to be like one of the biggest markets in X amount of years.
It probably wasn't me because I'm not that smart, but Seth seems right. He straddles the line between like normal sports and kind of like Magic the Gathering and stuff. Magic, that's not normal, Seth. Sorry, but like he's like either like the smartest football person ever or the smartest like Magic the Gathering person. It's crazy.
If you Google Seth Burns' name, you could read about. I don't know if you've ever done that, but you could read about his Magic the Gathering tournaments that he's been in.
I have not. I will check that out. I do know he plays them. So he seems like someone who'd be on top of that. Esports would be a fun way, and like I said, go check out Horse on the Shore. He'll answer all your questions.
Yes. All right. The next one, I guess, was more for me. That I mentioned here.
I didn't get this reference.
Yeah, the Vanilla Ice. So I made I'd read something about Vanilla Ice doing a concert in Texas. So like I started like off the top of my head, like I googled Ice Ice Baby, like the lyrics, and I was trying to come up with a parody related to COVID tied to Ice Ice Baby, and I came up with like parts of the first verse, and then like I had mentioned that I was gonna try to come up with more, but I never did. I give a lot of respect to like people like Weird Al.
I was about to say that our generation's Weird Al.
Like Weird Al, like I was listening to now that I have Sirius Radio in my car, now that I have a decent car and I have Sirius Radio, I was listening to old Howard Stern interviews and listening to Weird Al, and I didn't realize that he was like a valedictorian of like his high school. Like he was that smart, and it makes sense when you think about it, because like if you've ever listened to any of Weird Al stuff, like the parodies are amazing. So like to answer Capped All Days, I don't think I'm gonna do a follow up. And am I disappointed it didn't get more publicity? Yeah, sure. I was trying to think of other tweets that I've done. I know I've had many tweets where I'm like, all right, this is gonna kill. Like this is gonna do numbers. Like in my head, I'm like, like I'll get a big head, and it'll be like 2 likes.
Yeah.
Like
I go in with the assumption that all of my tweets are bad. Honestly, the only ones that ever do well have peanut in them. So
you have to throw an animal in there. Like I threw a.
Listen, I know my audience, man. I'm not above pandering. I know that. I know they're not there for my basketball takes.
Sure.
I think like 3 people might be, but the rest of them, I try and keep them at peace. Peanut does photograph pretty well. She's a good dog, and that's usually I'm gonna. And honestly, she hasn't been on, so I'm probably gonna get shit for that. But she's asleep right now anyway. But
is that
those are the only tweets I had that do well. So.
Yeah, is that been a new roommate in the background, or is that like, or have you had that?
Same roommate. Yeah, same roommate. He's been great about letting me do the pod. I just don't think he was here last time. He's one of my close friends.
Okay.
So I'm just annoying him on a Thursday night. That's what he gets for being smart and staying in and not going out into the pandemic. You got to deal with me talking about WNBA, but he kind of has to deal with that anyway. So he knows what he signed up for.
Sure. All right. the next one was from Sugar Shane about asking which gimmick of his is higher in the power ratings, making fun of roided up dipshits and touts. And I'll lead this. Like I've only seen a couple of his tweets about roided up dipshits, so but I've seen way more about touts, so I'm gonna go with touts only because of that. But maybe you've seen more of his tweets about roided up dipshits, where you might have a different.
Yeah, he brought this up because someone just screenshotted him dunking on someone.
Yeah.
Like completely unrelated, like didn't know him.
Yeah.
And he's just so mean, and it's awesome. I really do appreciate it. He's just a mean, like to the right people, right? Like it's good if you're mean to, like some people need to be bullied, myself included. And I think everyone has kind of jumped in on the hating on Touts game. And some people, he still got his fastball. Don't get me wrong on Touts, but then you got like Pikachu trying to dunk on him. I don't even, like guys like that who are just like you can be funny about it, or you can just like say they're dumb. And Shane's usually really funny about it, but it did crack me up that it was just someone completely unrelated that was just so tickled by how mean he was about this roided up like weirdo on the internet that really got me. He's got. Especially since he's an MMA guy, I think that's another thing that cracks me up is like that crowd is pretty ripe for the bullying when it comes to being roided up dipshits, and he tends to play to that really well. He cracks me up. I think he's on his second account because of how mean he is, which is great. I'm all for bullying online if the people are terrible people, and he's one of the best.
For a while I had one of, and it wasn't even it wasn't like one of his like ramblings about like one of these people, but I had one of his tweets quote tweeted from like I think it was his old account. So like, Sugar Shane's always been like a favorite of mine. And I'm glad that I had him.
He's awesome. He's one of those like wholly cynical guys to the right people. And then there's some people on gambling Twitter that are I don't love using like X Twitter as a group, but let's just for ease of use here, gambling Twitter that maybe are cynical to other people just to make sure that they know that they're good at gambling, which like is a great way to do it. I don't know if I get really good at gambling, maybe I'll do that too. I'll tweet mean stuff at Pizzola from my rocket car or something. I don't know. But I think Shane is a real good guy to like the right people and just super, super mean to the right people. And it's awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's fun to see. Like I don't have that in me. I don't have the time.
I jump in occasionally. I get some good ones. But at this point I'm blocked and I'm not going to make a new account. So
yeah,
pretty much everyone across the board, I'm blocked. That like would even be fun to make fun of. So
sure.
My novelty is lost. So like I said, I just go back to the bread and butter of peanut pictures or I've been cooking a lot lately. So those have been getting some traction, which has been good. Did some, I've been grilling a lot. I actually got made fun of for having a gas grill. It's not mine, but that was a wild endeavor. And it's just a weird website. But I do appreciate that Shane likes to go at people.
Sure. I threw in this question because I know that like we had mentioned that we didn't get to this question and I probably should have thrown this in the NBA part about from Necessary Paper about the Celtics. But like since you're a Celtics homer, let's just close with the Celtics.
Yeah, absolutely. So they just need to keep giving the ball to Jason Tatum at this point. Like that after he got selected an All-Star, I think he was averaging like 34 points. He was shooting like 49% from three on like 8 a game, something ridiculous. And he's actually a better defensive player than he is offensive player. A lot of people still evaluate defense in a point of attack or like on ball defense. The way the NBA works is on ball is mostly just a directional thing, like and a little bit of an effort thing. So like being able to close out or fight over screens maybe. But for the most part, you have a defensive scheme that you're pushing players directionally. And Tatum is not only good from that perspective, but he's good in help and in rotations. Great timing. They've had a top 3 or 5 defense basically every year he's been there. He's excellent. I think if they're going to contend, Kemba Walker has a little bit of a degenerative knee issue that they're going to need to manage. They're going to need Tatum to become a better playmaker in terms of passing. There were some games where he got doubled where he struggled to find the open guy. He's more of just a scorer in those situations. And they need a better backup center. If I have to watch Enes Kanter play basketball for 20 minutes a game next year, I may not be on. So I will lose my mind. That he is truly one of the most frustrating basketball players I've ever watched. And like, I think there were times where I was like pretty upset with like Jared Sullinger or Evan Turner. I watched David Lee, Jonas Jerebko. I was looking at some of the old players like Chris Humphreys. All of them pale in comparison to how frustrating Enes Kanter is. A lot of it is how vocally he's off the court and like how visibly he's off the court. But man, he's awful, and they need a better backup. I think Tice is a good center, but a better backup center and a better backup point guard. Brad Wanamaker, shout out to everyone that went to Pitt. It seems like a great guy, but I think that the drop off there is pretty significant when Kemba's out. So I really do think that like if Tatum continues, even on just like a general aging arc, like if you take like how good players are at 21 versus 22, 23, like his arc looks like he could make them a contender, right? Where he is now and where he could possibly get. Sure. And the things he can improve at would be something as you get older. But in the current roster construction, there's just too much Wanamaker and Enes Kanter for them to be a contender.
Sure. And as far as coach goes, you're cool with Brad Stevens?
It depends on what day you ask me. He is smart and he approaches basketball in a good way. I think like one theme that's popular on gambling Twitter is talking about results-based analysis and how like if you're only analyzing things with the results, especially in football, I think, then you're missing it. But he talks a lot about the process in that he's okay with guys taking shots because it's the right shot, even if it didn't go in. Like, I don't care. I mean, people miss shots all the time. Like that happens. So he's saying the right things. His rotations are just not great. He leaves guys out for a little too long and gets a little too comfortable with the lead. And he's a little bit limited in his offensive sets. So I think if we could get maybe Kara Lawson, one of our assistant coaches, just took the head coaching job coaching the women's basketball team at Duke, which is awful and excellent. It's a very conflicting moment for me as a UNC grad. I was very happy for her, but there was also a Celtics picture with everyone wearing a Duke shirt that made me want to throw my phone into traffic. So that was a horrific thing to log on to. I think that if they could replace her with maybe someone who has some good offensive schemes, that maybe could save Brad from himself there. But they've been a top 5 defense basically every season he's been there with some pretty not great defensive players. And they're always going to have a good defense on that side of the ball. But I'm okay with him. There's no one I'd want to fire him for at this point.
Yeah. I guess you have to. It's kind of like next man up. Like who's going to be. Yeah, who's going to be better than him if you get rid of him?
I will say Stan Van Gundy has a great Twitter account right now. Yeah. He's going off. He's just been firing, but I don't know if that's enough for me to want him as our coach.
Yeah. That reminds me, like, that one season that Orlando had, like, just sticks out like a sore thumb in my memory in terms of like a random year that a team like a team that nobody saw coming like just made it to the finals.
He made Rashard Lewis so much money. It's unbelievable. He just sat in the corner on Jameer Nelson, Dwight Howard pick and rolls and shot open threes all game. And then made $18 billion for the Wizards. I remember that contract. I don't even know if he finished his contract there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he had Dwight playing at MVP levels, which Dwight doesn't quite have that focus, although he's been a little different since his back injury. But I think he's going to get another shot here. Stan Van probably does. And I could probably name a few coaches who he deserves it over. But I think, I'm good with Brad. I think I would say put and then just try and build a team that can get around Giannis if he stays with the Bucks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm glad you're safe. Yeah. It's been a weird couple months. Thank you again for sending the beer. It was awesome doing that exchange. Looking forward to doing another one with you.
Yeah. Likewise.
And hopefully some of the information I gave is going to be useful to people that with the NBA starting back up.
Sure. Yeah, I think it will, and a lot of it's just there's so many unknowns that anyone that claims to know what's going to happen, especially in this day and age,
I had a couple people reach out to me with some corrections off the last one, and I think there's the default that maybe I'm knowledgeable about this since you're having me on, which I probably more than the average person, but there's a real chance I said something that was incorrect. So if there's something that's sticking out, feel free to tweet at me and let me know.
Yeah.
I will say that I mentioned that offense is better in the bonus, and someone said that it wasn't, but I did end up being right about that. But anything else, especially since a lot of the analysis at this point with the bubble just starting is still a little bit subjective. I'm not married to it, and if I'm happy. Actually, the cool thing after I did the podcast was a lot of people reached out to me asking questions after we did it. A lot is probably a stretch, but a couple people did, and if you do have any questions about that stuff, I'll try and help as best I can. And if you just want to have a discussion about anything I said that you maybe disagree with, I'm happy to do that.
Sure. Yeah, you seem pretty open to criticism. I
listen. I've been wrong a lot. I plan on being wrong a whole lot more. I always joke the best, the best sports bettors in the world are wrong 45% of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be wrong again. So if there's anything that you heard, if you made it this far, just go ahead and reach out.
Sure. All right. Well, Kevin, thanks for joining. Everyone for listening. Thank you once again. And cheers, and continue to enjoy the beers, and I'll continue to
let me know how they go.
Enjoy mine, and everyone, cheers, and till next time.
Till next time, man. See you, bud.
All right.